Your money is losing value while you sleep. One day, everything. Not because someone's stealing it. Challenge I gave myself. Not because you're spending it, but because inflation is silently eroding its purchasing power every single day. Let me show you what I mean with real numbers. In 2020, the average grocery bill for a family was about $387 per month. In 2025, that same basket of groceries costs approximately $520. That's a 34% increase in 5 years. If you had $10,000 sitting in a regular savings account, earning 0.5% interest in 2020, you still have about $10,250 today after interest. But that $10,250 can only buy what $7,639 could buy in 2020. You didn't spend a penny, but you lost $2,361 in purchasing power. That's inflation. It's a silent tax on everyone who holds cash. And it is especially brutal on people who are just trying to save money and do the right thing. Here is what makes this infuriating. The standard financial advice is save money in a high-yield savings account. But when inflation is running at 3 to 4% and your savings account pays 0.5 to 1%, you're not saving, you're slowly losing money in the most socially acceptable way possible. So what do you actually do? How do regular people, not investment bankers, not people with thousands to throw around to protect their money from inflation? I spent the last 3 years learning this the hard way. I watched $8,000 in savings lose purchasing power while I thought I was being responsible. Then I educated myself, changed my strategy, and I'm going to show you exactly what works for real people with real budgets. This isn't about getting rich. This isn't about complex investment strategies. This is about not getting poorer while you think you're saving. Let's break down what inflation actually is, how it's destroying your purchasing power right now, and the specific, actionable strategies you can use to fight back. Understanding inflation, the real numbers before we talk about protection strategies. You need to understand what you're protecting against. Because inflation isn't some abstract economic concept, it's a daily attack on your financial stability. What inflation actually means. Inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services rises, which means the purchasing power of your money falls. When inflation is 3%, it means what cost $100 last year costs $103 this year. It doesn't sound devastating, but it compounds, and most people completely underestimate how fast this destroys wealth. The compound effect. Let's say you have $20,000 saved. You're proud of this. It took years to save. With 3% annual inflation over 10 years, year 1, your $20,000 has the purchasing power of $19,400. Year 5, your $20,000 has the purchasing power of $17,240. Year 10, your $20,000 has the purchasing power of $14,880. You didn't spend $1, but you lost $5,120 in purchasing power. That's 25.6% of your money. Gone, just from holding it. But it's actually worse. Official inflation numbers, CPI, Consumer Price Index, often understate what you actually experience. The government calculates inflation based on a basket of goods, but your personal inflation rate depends on what you actually buy. If you're young and healthy, you might not care that medical costs increased 15% because you rarely go to the doctor. But you absolutely feel that rent increased 8%, groceries increased 6%, and gas fluctuates wildly. Here are some real inflation rates for common expenses 2020-2025. Housing, plus 32%. Food at home, plus 27%. Energy, plus 38%, used cars, plus 45%, childcare, plus 25%, while official inflation averaged about 3.8% annually. Your lived experience was probably closer to 5 to 7% inflation on things you actually spend money on. The savings account trap. Most savings accounts currently pay 0.5 to 1%. Interest, some high-yield accounts pay up to 4.5 to 5%. But those are exceptions. If inflation is 3% and your savings account pays 1%, you're losing 2% purchasing power per year on $10,000. That's $200 per year in losses. Over 20 years. That $10,000, me comes $12,200 $1 in nominal dollars, but only has the purchasing power of $6,716 in today's money. You lost 33% of your wealth by doing what you were told was safe. The fixed income trap. If your income doesn't increase with inflation, you're getting an automatic pay cut every year. Making $50,000 in 2020. If you're still making $50,000 in 2025 without raises, this is why protecting against inflation isn't optional, it's survival. Now let me show you how to actually do it. Strategy number 1. High yield savings for emergency money. Let's start with the baseline. Money you need to keep liquid for emergencies. The rule: 3 to 6 months of expenses should be kept in cash or cash equivalents for emergencies. This money prioritizes accessibility over growth, but even emergency money can fight back against inflation. High-yield savings accounts, HY. These are savings accounts that actually pay competitive interest rates. As of 2025, good HYSAs pay for 0.0 to 5.0% APY. Where to find them? Online banks Ally, Marcus Descover, Capital One 360 credit unions often have competitive rates. You're not betting on individual companies, you're betting on the entire economy adjusting to inflation, which it historically does. What to buy? For beginners, stick with broad index funds. S&P 500 index funds. For SPY. IVV. Total stock market funds. VTCX target date retirement funds. Automatically adjust allocation as you age. How much to invest? This is personal, but a common framework. Emergency fund. First 3 to 6 months expenses in HISA. High interest at payoff. Anything over 7 to 8% interest. Retirement accounts, 401k to employer match. Then IRA, taxable brokerage account for additional investments. The reality check. Stock market investments can lose value short term. In 2022, the S&P 500 dropped about 18%, but over 10, 20, 30 years, it has consistently beaten inflation by a significant margin. If you can't handle seeing your account balance drop 20% in a bad year, this strategy isn't for you. But if you can ignore short-term volatility and hold for decades, this is how you actually beat inflation. My approach: I invest 15% of my gross income into retirement accounts, minus 401k contribution up to employer match-free money. Roth IRA contributions $7,000 a year. Additional 401k contributions I invest in target date funds and total market index funds. I don't pick individual stocks. I don't try to time the market. I just consistently invest and let compound growth do its thing. Treasury inflation protected securities. TIPS are government bonds that adjust for inflation. They're more complex than I-bonds, but serve a similar purpose for larger amounts. Better for amounts over $10,000 annually. Best purchased through a brokerage account. More liquid than I-bonds. Slightly more complex tax treatment. Real estate carefully. Real estate can protect against inflation because property values tend to rise with inflation. Fixed-rate mortgages become cheaper in real terms. As inflation rises, rent increases track inflation, but real estate has massive costs: maintenance, taxes, insurance, vacancy risk, and isn't liquid. Only consider if you understand real estate investing deeply. You have significant capital. You can handle the time commitment and risk. I don't personally invest in real estate beyond my primary residence because the complexity and illiquidity don't work for my situation. What I avoid: increase your 401k contribution by 1%. Something. Because doing nothing guarantees you lose. Taking action gives you a fighting chance. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. Don't let inflation steal what you've worked so hard to save.